The JLR interview series.
Okay, so it's 7 p.m. British time today in London. Quite nice weather, quite sunny. And on Jazz London Radio, we've got a very interesting artist with us today. His name is Jalen Baker. So first of all, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
That's okay. Now, have I pronounced your name correctly?
Yes, you did. You did. Spot on.
Okay, that's great. Jalen is based in the United States. He's a vibraphone player. I believe an up-and-coming vibraphone player, very talented, writes his own compositions, and has recently brought out a new album, which will actually be released not too far away, on July 7th, on Solo Music Group, and it'll be called Be Still. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
And we've been playing a couple of tracks, and I really enjoyed it. And in fact, I thought it'd be nice to get you on the station because your previous LP was also really high quality. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you about, that's my first question about your new release. So it's your second album, is that right?
Yes.
So you're fairly new on the scene, basically. Have you been playing sort of a long time and then is your opportunity to start making your own music, or have you really just started to become professional in the last few years?
That's a tough question. So I guess I've played music like my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
But I recently, not even super recently, I finished all of my schooling in 2019.
Okay, so
at that point, that was when I could actually really just focus on being a professional career musician, opposed to like splitting time with also being a student, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'd say like the last three and a half years, maybe 4 years have been like the start of my like professional career.
Is that quite a big shift, or is it a seamless transition? How do you find it?
I think it was a little seamless because while I was in the last couple of years that I was in school, I was actively touring with some artists like Ulysses Owens Jr., the great drummer.
Mm-hmm.
So like I kind of had like 1 foot in, 1 foot out at the time. So 1 foot in school, 1 foot in the kind of on the professional scene. But when I finished school, I was able to kind of jump in completely.
Now, I've read autobiographies or biographies of a lot of artists in the past, going back decades. And, that seems to be a recurring theme, especially for musicians in the United States, that they might still be at school, they might be doing some work and they're already playing at a young age, and then, then they just make that transition. That's something that's quite normal or is it not too usual?
I think it's really common now.
Oh, it's really common.
With just how much like music education has developed
right.
Well, specifically jazz education over the last maybe just even 20, 30 years. So the way people tend to make connections with the older generation is by, going to the schools that some of these legends and veterans teach at. And a lot of us kind of learn that way. And that also helps us get our name around and whatnot to people who have been doing this for a longer time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like a similar theme, but just in a different way to how it used to be. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, can you tell us about your new sort of CD or album? I'm not sure what to call it anymore. CD, album, stream, but yeah. So yeah, can you tell us about it? I mean, is there a theme behind what you produced?
Yeah. I'd say like a loose theme because at the end of the day, I kind of just wanted to record some music that felt good to me and was fun to play with the band. But I would say that the overarching theme is this idea of just kind of accepting things that the world throws at you as they come, and not trying to control every aspect of your existence. And I think when the pandemic happened and everything shut down, I think it showed a lot of us that we weren't really in too much control of anything that happens around us. We're kind of at the mercy of the ebbs and flows of life. And I'm religious, and I think that we can try our hardest to like put ourselves in certain positions, but like at the end of the day, you kind of have to submit to the greater power and just kind of deal with those things as they come.
So, I mean, would you say the pandemic has sort of taught you sort of anything going forward then? In that case, that's what you, I suppose, inferring to?
Yeah, like, well, prior to the pandemic, and probably still a little bit now, like, I've always been, like, really, really intentional with the decisions that I make. I've always, like, wanted to make the right decisions and control everything just to put myself in the best position for me and my family to succeed. But, and whereas I'm still always kind of do that, I'm not going to get as down when things don't go the way that I wanted it to. It's like I'm gonna just you roll with the punches and you adjust accordingly. And I think the pandemic kind of made all of us like have to do that whether we wanted to or not. We kind of have to wait for things to clear up. We have to, like the name of the album is "Be Still," so in a way we all had to be still and accept the reality of what was currently going on in the world.
Okay, that's quite interesting because I suppose that's a big lesson then, isn't it, for a lot of people that you sometimes you just have to go with the flow. And also it teaches us that, I suppose, going forward, that it could be a bit more adaptable, like I said, because a lot of people just like things in a certain way, and if it's not that way, then they get all flustered and thrown off course. I'm not really like that. I'm a bit more adaptable, but I can understand people who are like that, and something like this has been a real bummer for everyone.
Exactly.
For lack of a better expression.
And I think me not trying to dictate everything has introduced me to some calmness that I probably didn't experience when I was a little bit younger. I'm not very old still, but just even like 5 years ago, like when I was in school, I was always like, all right, I got to do this if I want to get to this point. And now I kind of realize that, okay, I can position myself to do certain things, but it's not always going to work out the way that I want it to. And, like you said, just go with the flow and take things as they come.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, like, for instance, with this recording, so I've been interviewing lots of musicians throughout the pandemic, from 2020 up till now, and there's been a bit of a change. So, originally, I'll interview musicians, say, in 2020 or early 2021, and they had to, like, do the recording a totally different way to how they've done it in the past. Obviously, they weren't able to tour and all these sort of things. So they'll, one person will be over there, hours away, doing their bit in their studio, and then they'll send a file and blah, blah, blah. So they weren't actually getting together in the studio and recording. And then more recently, over the last 12 months, I've been interviewing musicians and artists, and they've been going back to the more traditional way of recording. So how were you able to record this music?
This one was in the more traditional way. So we were all in the same studio in our respective sectors of the studio with mics, and we got it all done in a day, about 6 hours.
Wow, that's good.
I know that was like my brain was like fried at the end of it, but it's fun. It was definitely nice to get back to the way things had normally been. And my first album we recorded in the same way, like a more traditional way, but there were challenges with that. Like we had to get a bigger studio, and the owner of the studio didn't want a certain amount of people in a room at a certain amount of time. So this one was a lot more relaxed, like there was less anxiety in the room because I think when I recorded my first one, which was recorded in 2020, the back end of 2020,
Yeah.
it was tensions, especially in New York, were still like really, really high.
Yeah. But do you think that came out of the music? I mean, I wouldn't have been able to detect anything because I just enjoyed the music. But do you think that came out of the music at all? The tension that you're talking about, or not?
I maybe a little bit. It's kind of hard to say because it's hard to put myself back in that time. But I do know that everybody was a little antsy because we still wore masks in the studio and everything. So I find it hard to believe that it didn't. But it's hard to say for sure, you know. But I can't say that this current album, I think it's the same. It's pretty much the same band. I think everyone was a little bit more relaxed. Yeah.
And can you tell us who the musicians are who are playing with you, please?
Yeah. On piano, great pianist named Paul Cornish, who's also from Houston, Texas. Mm-hmm. We grew up together. We've known each other since we were in elementary school. Gavin Molchan on drums, who's from Houston, Texas, great drummer. Mm-hmm. And bass player Gabriel Godoy, who's from Miami, Florida.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And you wrote most of the compositions for the record, including the title track.
Yes.
And also, I noticed, because I played it last week, I do a sequence called Original V Covers once a week for an hour. And I love it because you get all this opportunity to play all these original tunes from either a few years ago or decades ago, and then play a cover version. And I actually played Herzog by Bobby Hutcherson in your version. I mean, your version is just amazing. Now, I've never heard that done by anyone else before as well. So what inspired you to do Herzog?
Man, so first off, just Bobby Hutcherson is one of my favorite musicians.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Regardless of instrument, like I'm probably a little biased because I play behind, but like when I was still playing classical music, I heard Bobby, and I was like, wow, I didn't even know you could play the mallet instruments like that.
Yeah.
And last February, one of my, I guess, well, how would I say, one of my mentors, Jason Moran.
Oh yeah, Jason Moran.
Yeah, Jason's also from Houston.
All right. Okay.
Somebody, I guess, one of the museums contacted Jason needing some music at the art museum, and Jason asked me to do a tribute to Bobby Hutcherson on this art installation that Jason had built. So I took it upon myself to dig into some of Bobby's music because I hadn't, like when you're a consumer of music, there's ebbs and flows, right? So like I hadn't really been checking a ton of Bobby out over the last year or so. So that gig gave me the opportunity to get back into his music. And I've always knew Herzog, but I never played it before. Right. So I was like, oh man, we're gonna play this, and I should do like a little arrangement for it. And it came out pretty good. So I was like, oh, we should record this because we started playing it in my actual band, and it's a fun tune.
It is
great writing. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky. I saw him twice in London.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I saw him once with McCoy Tyner as well. How about that?
Oh, that's incredible.
Yes. Yeah, very lucky. So that's fantastic. And so next question I really want to ask you is, so like at the moment there's a lot of really young, talented British musicians coming out of this country. Mm-hmm. They're very talented and writing some really interesting music. But I've noticed that I can't think of a single vibes player coming out of this country. There might be one, but I just don't know of any. So all the usual instruments, saxophones, keyboards, trumpet, and you just don't get that many vibe players at all. Obviously, in the States, there's been few, but not that many. So that's my question: what drew you to the vibes or the vibraphone?
I think so. I started off playing drums. That's right. My, I guess, introduction into music was playing drum, snare drum, percussion, drum set. Mm-hmm. And I went to a performing arts school here in Houston called the High School for the Performing and Visual Arts. And all of these great jazz musicians have come out of the high school, like Jason Moran, Robert Glasper, Chris Day, Eric Harlan, Kendrick Scott, Mike Moreno. It's a long list. So I was at that school for to play classical percussion, but all of my best friends were in the jazz program. And like, whereas I was like, I could play drum set, but when I tell you, like, my friends who were drum set players when I was in high school were like next level, incredible, and still are. Like, a lot of them are still playing, like, on the scene. And I was like, well, you know, I probably should do something else, like, because I can't compete with what they're doing on drum set. And I just so happened to hear a record by Stephon Harris.
Yes.
Called Urbanus. And it was like, that's kind of like one of his more, like, I guess, like maybe funk or poppier records, in sound at least. And it so closely resembled the music that I, like, grew up listening to, like Earth, Wind and Fire and a lot of Motown stuff. It just kind of gave me that same feeling, just like so much blues in his playing. And I was like, oh, I think I can do this. So I just kind of started trying to play along to his records and trying to play vibes with my friends, not knowing what I was doing at all. But I'm very grateful to people like my pianist Paul for when we were young, like really, really like being open to like teaching me the music and whatnot.
Well, I mean, what age were you when you made the switch to vibes, would you say?
About 16, 17.
About 16, 17. That's nice there. I mean, it's quite normal then, isn't it, for a lot of musicians to start on one thing and then switch, and then they ended up playing their whole career on a different instrument. That's quite normal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of it probably has to do with, you know, when we're kids, we kind of just do what we're told.
Right.
And when you start to like realize what you actually like, then it just makes it easier to make the switch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I'm not. I don't play any instruments or anything. I just love listening to music. Yeah. But what I will ask is, so I remember Pat Metheny being interviewed years ago, and I think he said that quite a few members of the family were trumpet players. I think his brother was also a trumpet player, and he said that I think he said he played trumpet for a few years when he was younger, whatever. He said it helps when he plays guitar. Playing the trumpet helps with his breathing, and phrasing. So with a vibes player, do you approach it differently from, say, like a piano player would, or do you have to do anything different?
I'd say that I do. I think it kind of depends on the person, and I think because my background is so heavily ingrained in percussion and drums, I kind of like come at it from that angle.
Right.
So like I think like much like Pat was saying that playing trumpet helps with his breathing. I think playing drums helps my rhythm and my time. And jazz is such a rhythmic music that I think it was kind of easier. I don't want to say easy, but easier for me to step into it, having had such a like strong drum background and everything. So all I really needed to do was get the kind of the theory, the musical theory behind it, and combine the two, and that made it easier to approach. So
I mean, from what you're saying, different vibes players might approach it from what, a totally different direction, even, or would that come out in their sound?
Yeah, I know some vibes players who kind of started off playing piano,
right,
initially, like Joel Ross, who's a friend of mine. I believe that like he's actually just a great pianist. So I don't know how many people know that because he's such a talented vibraphonist, but he's a great pianist too. And I do think that he kind of has come at the vibes from that angle a little bit. And then there's some others that I know who are probably a little less of a drum background and maybe more of a even like a horn background. You know, it's just kind of like what nobody really starts on vibes because the instrument isn't super accessible.
Right.
But yeah, so like I think based on kind of how you just got into music, in general, I think that's kind of like how you're going to approach the instrument. And the great thing about vibraphone is that since there's historically has not been a ton, there's no real right or wrong way to play it. Like I think that's always been really cool. Where if you play saxophone, there's this humongous list of guys that have like kind of written the book on how to play saxophone, whereas the list of vibraphonists is like so like now, like since there's more of us now, I think everybody sounds so different from each other.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you said that, because I mean, the vibes players that I've listened to over the years, I've always wondered this, right, from one player to another, this could be so different. The sound, the texture, everything. Mm-hmm. One would sound very percussive, the other would sound very more free flowing.
Yeah. I think that's maybe not. It's not the only reason, but I think one of the big reasons is that there's just hasn't been a ton of us just historically. So, because if there was 100 vibraphonists that have like been considered legends over the years, I think people would gravitate towards that. Whereas now it's kind of like, well, the book hasn't really been written on how to play the instrument yet, so you kind of have the luxury of figuring it out for yourself.
I mean, are there any other players that you grew up really liking besides Bobby Hutcherson? You mentioned Stephon Harris.
Yeah, I love Warren Wolf. Warren Wolf. Steve Nelson.
Steve Nelson. Yeah.
Big favorite of mine. Then I like a lot of the guys around my age, like Joel. I mentioned Joel, Simon Moulier, Juan Diego, who's in. I think he's Venezuelan. He lives in New York. Great player. We're about the same age. I mean, there's a lot, you know. I think of trying to. I hate when I can't think of something.
That's all right. I put you on the spot. Don't worry.
That's all good. Nobody would take it personally, but there's a lot of great players that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned what's his name? The one from Venezuela.
Juan Diego.
Yeah, because that's the next one I was going to. I can't think of any vibe players other than came out of the United States that I really like. I just don't know. That's incredible. I've never really thought about this before.
Yeah, you know, there's a handful. You know, there's another vibraphonist that I really like. Her name's Chin Chin Lu. She's from Taiwan.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I've heard this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they have just a big percussion community in that country.
Really?
Strangely, like I like it's kind of random, but I think that stems from the instrument is a little bit more accessible here in the States. Like most marching bands, most high school bands are at least gonna own a vibraphone.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. And I think just people getting to be able to touch and play the instrument, if you like having that experience, obviously unlocks the possibility of playing it. But I'm not too sure in most countries how much of a thing that school band is. Like, I'm just ignorant to that. Like, I don't know if there's marching bands and whatnot in other parts of the world.
I wouldn't have thought so. I think maybe not quite marching bands, no. But you know, the vibes. Is it an African instrument originally, or because that's another thing? Do you know the origins of it?
Yeah, it's an American adaptation.
Right.
So it is an American instrument, but it stems from the African marimba or bellophone.
Right.
And I guess the American take on it is the vibraphone and xylophone. I want to say the xylophone is closer to America than it is maybe Africa. But it's a young instrument. Maybe just barely over 100 years old.
Oh, right.
Compared to most instruments that are like kind of in a few centuries.
Well,
so
marvelous. Well, so you know, I'll call you a pioneer then. I
can't take that title quite yet, but I appreciate it.
Okay. So yeah, so I just wanted to ask one more thing. So yeah, the record's coming out next month, 7th of July. And I've played a track, so we'll continue to play. I've played Be Still, I've played Herzog, and I'll play some more stuff for sure. What about touring? Do you get an opportunity to tour with your band once the record's released?
Yeah, we're doing a U.S. tour in September. So it'll be about 10 days. It's a short one, but trying to do it more. It pops up here and there. It's just kind of when everyone's available and when the right situations pop up. You know what I mean? With financially, I should say. Like,
yeah.
So it'll ramp up when the album releases. I'll probably try to set some more stuff up. Well, it just kind of depends, but definitely we have something coming up in September.
And what about sort of Europe? Do you ever get a chance to come to Europe and play?
As a side man, I was just in London.
Right.
In April? Yeah, in April with the trumpet player Jeremy Hill.
Oh, okay. What did you play? Do you remember?
Yeah, we played Ronnie Scott's.
Oh, Ronnie Scott's. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's good.
Yeah, I think we're coming back in October too. Actually.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
think I'll be in the UK in October as well. So.
Okay. Well, I'll keep an eye on that. But with your own band, do you think maybe that's something? Hopefully, in the future you'll get, because obviously there's a lot of festivals in Europe as well.
Yeah, definitely looking at trying to make that happen sooner than later.
Yeah, okay. Well, I hope so, because obviously your music is top class, so I'm sure you'll be able to get some bookings. I'm absolutely sure that. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, well, thanks for this interview. Really interesting, and it's nice talking to a vibes player, because I don't get to do that too often. And really enjoyed the music. I enjoyed your first album as well. So you got something to say, which is really important for the music to keep going. So yeah, thanks for the interview.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're absolutely welcome. Cheers.
The JLR Interview Series.